You think you're going to have, you think you're going to have a technical difficulty that you can, assess from the confines of the office, and then all of a sudden you see a dog standing there with your mouse in his mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm Frank Johnson, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation and host of the Range Report on YouTube, Rumble, and every other social media network. Directly to my left is Michael Marshall, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation, constitutional scholar. Jan Rains, our resident alternative lifestyle expert. Right below him, Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Bronx, scourge of AOC. And our very special guest this week, Liz Lazarus, not only is a Second Amendment proponent and advocate, but best-selling author and former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. Liz, thank you very much for joining us this week.
I was just going to compliment you for getting the Brady Bunch lineup correct until you called me a cheerleader.
We're getting pretty good at letting the computer handle that all by itself, because as soon as we mess with the buttons, we screw it all up. So, kids, it has been thus far a very interesting week.
Yeah, we've been talking about it in the green room before everyone showed up.
Getting even more interesting by the day.
The fun is just starting.
I'm just going to throw this out there quick, and then I'm going to pretty much refrain from the evening until I have something stupid to say. But do you remember a couple of weeks ago, Vass, when I had mentioned that you're going to see Sleepy Joe, the kid sniffing pedo, is going to wind up playing the Vincent the Gin Gigante card? You remember I said that?
Meaning?
You remember Vinny the Chin Gigante, crime boss who they didn't want to prosecute because
and faking the
trial.
Yeah, that he fakes the insanity.
And it's why everybody says, "Oh, Biden is an idiot. Biden's an idiot." And I've been the one saying he's not an idiot. He's playing the long game.
I think he's truly
we
deficient because of his health.
Based on his policy. But as far as the strategy, I said, you think for a second there wasn't a little bit of a bird flying over into the special counsel's ear that says, just tell everybody he's incompetent, that he's losing his memory, and that's why we can't charge him with the multiple felonies of mishandling classified documents. He'll go on TV, claim that he's fine. This way, if he wins the election, it's no harm, no foul. If he loses the election and Trump decides to put a special counsel in there who will indict him, then all of a sudden, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a creepy old forgetful guy.
That defense doesn't work. That defense
I see them studying.
Hey, it already worked because he's not getting charged. He's not getting charged. He's coming from the White House saying he's 100% competent. There's nothing wrong with his memory. There's nothing wrong with his, being coherent or anything else like that. The special counsel is saying he's a feeble old man with a bad memory, who's not competent to be charged with this. How's he competent to be in the White House?
Well, there's your first problem, but he was competent. Remember, here's something that people have to put in context here.
Yeah, he was competent when he took the documents
30 years ago when he was a senator and held them, which was at that moment a violation of the United States Classified Documents Code. He was never authorized to do that. He never secured them. Being in a garage with your car is not laying around on the ground in your garage with your car is not secure. He is in violation automatically.
Well, those aren't even the ones that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the ones that he had in the Biden Center that the Chinese government had complete access to for the last 12 years. Well, and what they're saying, they can't even reveal the subject matter of the classified documents today because they're still top secret classified.
Yeah, and the organization would be the Confucius Institute.
There's a lot more at play than just that. This is also setting the stage for a competency hearing, 25th Amendment hearing.
By the way, Liz, as you can see, we kind of played a little bit loose. I'm more so you can always jump in. I'm more the politics and policy in that end. Mike's more constitutional. Jan's the public conscience, And Frank is,
nobody
we
knows
haven't
what I
defined
am.
Frank yet.
And I'm about women making sure they take care of themselves, no matter
There
who's
you go.
president, right? But no, this is fascinating to listen to, so I will keep listening.
Oh, okay.
Frank's a wild card.
Yeah, he goes everywhere.
Yeah, I think we figured that one out.
But
Oh, no, it's just I've grown up in a police and law enforcement environment, and I've always been of the investigatory mind. So every time that I look at every time something says or does something, when it's public or private or whatever, I try to parse together every single thing that they're saying and see what the game is that they're not telling you. I'm a poker player. I look at what cards that they're being played, and I'm batting 500. So a lot of things I'm right about, some things I'm wrong about, but I'm never wrong about when I say they play the long ball. Every single thing that they do, there's a reason behind it, and we just have to be able to figure out what that reason is. Because the rest of the public isn't privy to a lot of the information because the news doesn't report it. We just happen to follow every single thread that we find until we get to the bottom of something.
It is kind of crazy when you watch different news outlets between like CNN and Fox and the others. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm not even in the same country when you watch different news outlets and you hear different stories.
Yeah, you should see what they're saying.
Mattering of all of it to even try to make a judgment. Frank, I was curious, how is it to move from New York to North Carolina? Do you feel like you have more liberties in North Carolina? You must, right?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and about 25 years ago, my family and I moved to upstate New York. So we went from the fast pace of New York City to the cemetery area of the southern tier of New York. I mean, it was just dead. There was a big culture shock between those two environments because upstate New York is still very blue collar, conservative thinking. There's a lot more liberties there. Moving to North Carolina, it's a perfect blend of slow and speed, but we've just got a lot more of our freedoms here. And it is, if it weren't for visiting family and keeping my accent tuned up, I would have no reason to go to New York at all. That's it. No reason whatsoever. I as soon as I hit the highway and I see the first sign that says north, my blood pressure just starts going up, and I would have turned around and go home. I can't tolerate going up there anymore. It's sickening. And then to see what the cesspool that New York has turned into just in the couple of years that I've been gone. I'm in North Carolina 5 years now. This July will be 5 years. To see the cesspool that it has turned into, it's beyond maddening. I mean, it was crazy. It was getting crazy when I still lived there and I watched it from afar. Now I'm watching it from, like you said, like a different country altogether. And to see what they're doing, it's crazy. It's sick.
That's why 4 million left. Go ahead.
Came out when Free Malice came out. I did a book tour, and I ended up going to about 20 different states, and a lot of it was going to like Armed Women of America chapters. And so we would do the book talk, and then we would go to the range, and it was just mind-boggling to me to see how the laws are different between different states, and made me so thankful I'm in Georgia, where I feel like we've got a lot of freedoms here. So I can get coming from different states, which I was oblivious to. I was really oblivious to how strict some states can be versus others.
And
New York is one of the worst.
Definitely restrictive. Yeah. And we have a saying when we teach like firearm classes. A lot of times people ask about, traveling with their firearms. And a lot of times they say that, they have to travel north and they have to do this. And I said, listen, the number one rule and all you have to know is stay the hell out of New Jersey. That's it. Just stay out of New Jersey at all costs. If you have to get to the bridge and then swim around the state, do that. Just stay out of New Jersey, because New Jersey is the absolute worst. But New York's a close second. California is probably third as far as restrictive policies go, at least as far as Second Amendment related issues go.
Illinois, especially the Chicago area, really bad.
Well, listen, if you live in Chicago, have comfort knowing that they call for a ceasefire resolution in Israel and Palestine, but they don't have a ceasefire resolution within their confines of their own city. So Way to go, Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my facetiousness.
It's one of the big things, but
Forgot to turn my sign on.
I don't know. There's so much, and I understand what you're saying, Liz. Like, I hear this all the time. Like, this is all I do. I watch anime, I play video games, and I cover the news. I don't know, somewhere between 6 to 12 hours a day, sometimes more. All I do is watch news. And mind you, I never watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. I don't follow the mainstream in terms of the cable news. I'm looking at BBC, Guardian, Times of India, Hindustan Times, Japan Times, and several other organizations here in the United States. It is remarkable. It is stunning to see the difference in the news coverage. You think it's crazy going from Fox to CNN? Go and listen to what the BBC and the Times of Israel and the Hindustan Times and maybe Sky News out of Australia. You look at those four, and then on the same story that's here in the United States, and it's amazing that once you go overseas, you will learn more about what's happening in America on some of these issues than any American mainstream news media. Like, you'll get more of a quote, you'll get more of the background, you get more of the details. They'll even go into some of the consequences. Here in the United States, all you hear is, here's the headline, and this is what they think you should feel. Done. Next story. It's like, which is part of the reason why things are so bad right now, I think. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if you ever read any of the overseas publications.
Yeah, I actually watched the BBC a fair amount. I lived in France for about 3 years, so it was interesting to see the view of America from outsiders. Now, this was many years ago, but yeah, you're right, Michael. You have to really get a smattering of different input and then make your own opinion.
Yeah,
Well,
that's always the best way.
yeah, and seeing it from the outside looking in, by going to these other media sources outside of the U.S. Is actually very telling, because you're not getting as much of the political bias as you do here in the United States.
Yeah. Should we, Jan?
Now, Jan, you're the one that read the book.
What book? I read a book? Yes, I did.
Yeah, Jen has been like giving us little excerpts as the last couple of weeks have gone by. He says, I wrote this, I did that. Okay, listen, she's going to be on the show. You're going to be in command. We keep adding to Jan's to-do list, and she hates us for it.
Well, Jan, I hope they're paying you well. I hope they're paying you well if they keep adding to your to-do list.
Are you kidding? Pay, what's that?
Yeah, we've been asking the same question for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Got it.
But what I did tell them is there's no way I can do this whole interview, because that's just not me, unfortunately.
Oh, you better. She always says these things, and then she does fantastic.
Oh no.
She's just she is shy. That's all it is.
All right, well, tell you what, Liz, give us a quick synopsis of the not only this, but so far you have how many titles do you have now? 3?
Yeah, 3 are out. I just finished the 4th one, but it's not yet published.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it became kind of an addictive hobby, if you will. But I did not intend to become an author. I was an industrial engineer by training, and spent most of my career in corporate America. But I wrote Free of Malice because it was a calling, if you will. And I just couldn't get the book out of my mind. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to have to write it. But long story short, it was based on a real story. I was attacked in college. A guy broke into my house through the kitchen window and broke into my bedroom. And thank God, I was a senior in college, but thank God I had the wherewithal to realize what was going on and fight back. You know, you never know in that situation if you're going to freeze or fight. But I fought back, fought him off. And afterward, I had said, if I'd owned a gun, I would have shot him as he was leaving. And my brother-in-law at the time had said, Well, if you had gotten to a gun at that point, he was retreating off your property. You would have shot him in the back. That may not have been self-defense.
Yeah,
And
that wouldn't have been self-defense.
right. So it was intriguing to me because at that point I thought that guy deserved anything he had coming for him. And so I decided I would do the research of what's that line between self-defense and vigilantism. So my character in the book was attacked similarly to me, but the book is fiction. And she starts working with a lawyer, young Black lawyer, to write a legal story, a hypothetical legal story of what would have happened had she shot and killed the guy. And the lawyer knows things about her in that night that she's never revealed that he shouldn't know. So she starts to suspect him. And then you figure out at the end who the bad guy is. But I tell you, I worked with 3 criminal defense lawyers to play out what would have legally happened. And it was really enlightening to me to find out all the different things that could have played out in court.
I don't think I've read a book in a while that is this descriptive on everything. I mean, it really, it's almost like you're the first person in the story.
Oh, I think I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. But yeah, I sat down with the main criminal defense lawyer that I worked with, and I kind of played the character of Laura, the protagonist who'd been attacked, and she played the lawyer character. And it was things like, if you go to the range, a lawyer can play it that you're bloodthirsty. Another lawyer can play it that if you don't go to the range, you don't practice enough. So no matter what you do, things can be spun to make you look good or bad. And one thing that was really enlightening to me was that no matter what, you're a couple years in jail waiting for your trial. So even if later you become, you're lucky, you have a good lawyer, you have a sympathetic jury, you still have destroyed your life. So I think a lot of times we get firearms training as far as the technique, but we don't always get the legal side of the story. And so what I tried to do was entertain and educate at the same time in the book.
Well, that's one of the things that I stress when I teach people is the frame of mind that you're in that kind of a situation, because just because you have a gun, just because you have training, doesn't mean that you're going to respond in the appropriate way to the situation that presents itself to you. We all have that flight and fight mechanism, and 90% of winning the fight is being in the frame of mind of a defender. What you have to do to defend your life at that moment. And like you were saying, if the guy's leaving, you're going to be looked at as, at that point, well, now the threat is over. Well, you don't know that the threat is over. Maybe you just fought him off enough, and he's just going to grab his bag, which is outside, and he can come back in with a crowbar. The situation is not over; it's still in flux. So you have to look at it. Well, how would the jury look at it? There's always, for every way that they could attack you to try and prosecute you, there's a way you can defend yourself to a jury to make them understand that the threat is not over until you are alone. When you are alone and then you're secure, that's when the threat is over. Whether or not you put that person down or the person has vacated the scene and now help has arrived, that's when the threat is over. Up until that time, you're still in that frame of mind that anything can happen. The likelihood of somebody coming through the window is less likely than the odds of that person coming back.
Well, and I think that point was brought up pretty well when in the book it started discussing reaction time, and one of the things that they were discussing was you went to go get your mace out of your drawer. How long did it take you to do that? And in the book she says, oh, it had to be more than a minute. And the lawyer goes, I bet it was seconds. He said that's a perceivement that we get in that heat of the moment time. It seems like a longer period of your reaction time than it actually is.
When people asked me how long was he in your bedroom, because the first thing I knew was I was asleep. It was 4 a.m. The first thing that woke me up was the sound of my door being kicked open, and I see his silhouette in the doorway. And my first thought was, is this real? And my second thought was, yeah, this is real. You got to do something. and he charged me. We ended up in full fight mode. And people asked me how long it was, and I couldn't tell you. I don't know how long it was. I remember at one point, and this is in The Gift of Fear, where he said, if you shut up, I'll leave, because I was screaming. And I thought to myself, I'm not shutting up. I'm screaming louder because it's affecting him. But yeah, I couldn't tell you how long it lasted. And Jan, you saw this in the book, I never got a good look at him. So I couldn't even tell you what he looked like because it was dark and it happened really fast. But when you're woken up in the middle of the night, you aren't thinking about, okay, he's now retreating. I'm no longer in danger. Now I'm the aggressor. None of that crosses your mind. All you can think about is you're still in defense mode. Even when he's retreating, I still felt like I was in defense mode. And that's what really shocked me about thinking I could have been prosecuted had I shot him.
Well, the survival of the victim is always going to be more important than the defense of the aggressor, as far as I'm concerned. That's your survival mode. How long does it take? I mean, if you get into a fender bender, it takes 20 minutes to a half hour before your adrenaline starts to calm down, or you even realize what just happened. And that's in an innocuous accident where nobody's at fault. Nobody was acting maliciously. There was no evil intent or anything else like that. Just a fender bender scares the living hell out of you. Forget about being attacked. You know, I mean, they say the longest 3 minutes in sports is a boxing match. If you've ever spent 3 minutes in a ring getting punched in the face, that's like 2 hours in your mind's eye. So, you know, the concept of time just goes out the window when you feel that your life is in danger.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. When I was rodeoing and wrestling and doing combat arms training in the Marine Corps. Yeah. Concept of time goes away.
Yeah. When I was in Russia and we were going through when the coup attempt happened in 91 in Russia, and we saw the tanks rolling down the street, everything went surreal. I couldn't tell you how long that actually took. Just knew it was happening forever. That moment in time, it's really terrifying, and I can't imagine what it would have been like, Liz, for you to just, you know, you're asleep, you open your eyes, and you're instantly in a scenario. And like Mike, I've been in the Marines. We're trained to, you know, you snap to, you get into action, you're in that mode. There's a mindset, and you'd be amazed what you can do when the training's phenomenal in the Marines. Yeah, to get you into that mindset to be able to do that. But that's when you're awake. That's when you're conscious. It's a conscious switch to go into that mode to do the things that need to be done. I can't imagine just waking up and your brain's not even on. I can't imagine what you went through there.
You know, Michael, there was something that was really eerie too, or ironic. I don't know if ironic, but maybe heaven sent, was that night before I went to sleep. This was hours beforehand. I had this eerie feeling that someone was watching me, and I write about it in the book. And I pulled the curtains back and looked outside, and I didn't see anything. It was just pitch black. But I did two things I don't normally do, or didn't normally do. I changed into my pajamas in the bathroom instead of my bedroom. And I was living in an older house with two other girls just off campus. And the door had this flimsy bar latch, you know, just the little ones that you slide. And that night I locked it, which is nothing I'd ever done before. And so instead of being able to creep up on me, and the first I knew of him would have been him right on top of me, I had that couple split seconds to wake up because he had to kick open the door and the sound woke me up. And I mean, I feel like that really saved me, giving me just a few seconds to figure out what was going on. But
well, then I have a question from that, because in the book, when you're going through the stuff with the lawyer, and you're going through this stuff, and he starts asking you about the police and their investigation. And one of the things you pointed out was the police didn't go in the house and look at the fact that the lock was broken. Did that really happen, or was that just to make the book a little more interesting?
No, that really happened. And I'm the biggest fan of the police. So let me start with that. But there was a little bit of an attitude back then. Well, you were lucky you weren't raped. You can't describe the guy. So there's not much we can do. And back then, though he'd bit my hand, and they didn't take DNA. They even had asked me early on, was I sure I locked the door? And of course I said yes, because I had that eerie feeling. And it was my neighbor who had come over who saw where he had broken in through the window. But I mean, the fact that I couldn't describe him and I wasn't raped, I was able to fight him off. It was kind of like, well, there's not much we can do. I think it would be different.
And that's
today.
another
They'd
thing.
be taking the DNA. They'd be trying, I think, a little more diligently to figure out who the guy was.
I would hope so.
And that's another thing. When you're fighting for your life, details of how a person looks and so forth, those aren't embedded in your mind. You see
Not
a form, you see a figure there.
You're right, Michael. That is true. Didn't even occur to me to try to get, they say, try to figure out a tattoo or a description or something.
You're not going
occur to me.
You're worried about saving your life. That's top of mind. And everything else goes out the door.
Mm-hmm. I've actually had a home invasion one time in Binghamton when I lived in Binghamton, my house there. And it was about like 4 a.m. on a Saturday. But it was a 100-year-old house. So we had like 3-inch thick doors, solid doors. So it took a while to kick that down. So I was able to call the cops. I was already moving. But to this day, I can't accurately describe that guy. Now, mind you, I had woken up, had some friends over, and I got them into a safe area of the house where they could retreat and I could defend. This individual broke through a 3-inch thick solid wood door to get into the household. I heard him. I knew he was coming. I was prepared for him. I was in a defensive position, and I knew the police were on their way. Still can't tell you more than he was white, had blonde hair, his approximate height and weight, generally. I can't give you what does he look like? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. And I was getting prepped. So, I mean, that just gives you an idea of that. Like, it gets very difficult because you're in that fight or flight mode, that preservation mode. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, they say in law enforcement, eyewitness testimony is among the least reliable information that you can gather at a crime scene. You see, if you have 10 witnesses to an accident, you can have 11 different descriptions of what happened, and none of them are going to be the correct one. It's eyewitness testimony it's just such in flux, and those are people who are just bystanders. They're not people that are intimately involved in the situation at hand. So the person who's usually the recipient of an attack is going to have the least reliable information because they're 99% consumed with survival and not trying to figure out how to assist the police in an investigation 6 months later. Mm-hmm. They're more concerned with that. And like, Liz, like your story is, even though it's not firearm related, and you have then, eventually became a Second Amendment advocate and proponent of the Second Amendment. And I know you've been to Gunsight and all the rest of this. I know you're proficient in what you do, but your story is still the story of a victor and not necessarily the story of a victim. It started out as you being a victim, but you were able to turn it into you won. That you got out. That person left and you won. You were left with the scar of being attacked, but walking out whole. You were able to fend somebody off, defend yourself, defend your life, chase somebody out of there, and now you are on the winning side of it, versus you have a lot of, unfortunately, situations where a lot, especially women, are not so fortunate, where they wind up, horrendous situations that they wind up falling victim to and never able to either put their lives back together or, be able to explain. When you tell your story, I always say, like, nobody wants to put themselves in the shoes of a victim, because you have to relive that horror to put yourself in their mind. You have to imagine that horror being perpetrated upon you to sympathize with what that person went with. You're a fighter. More women have to listen to you and your fighting spirit, and be able to understand that you can prevail. You do not bottle yourself up. You do not sit there, ball yourself up, and just pray to survive. You fight tooth and nail and do what you need to do to come out. And I thank God that you were able to do that, not only for yourself, but as to serve as an example for other people, that you can win, even if the odds are stacked against you, even if you don't have that firearm, or you don't have the a blade or mace or something at your immediate disposal. You're a testament to the fighting spirit, and that you should be very proud of yourself for.
Well, thank you, Frank. And I didn't know if I would fight back. I mean, it never even occurred to me. I grew up very sheltered in South Georgia. It never even occurred to me something like this could happen. So I'm very thankful that my instinct was to fight back. But as I've done my book talk and talked to women, I mean, even the ones that just tell me now I lock my doors or I get an alarm, that there are preventative steps that can be taken. I think if I'd had a firearm at the time, I wouldn't have even been able to get to it. But my voice was what saved me. But I also have done research as I've written the other books, and it's very clear the type of people that become victims. They're not situationally aware, their head's in the phone, they're not walking with confidence. And so there are ways to carry yourself to not be a victim. And so all the things I've learned since then for subsequent books, and just how to fight back for that very first event, teach you how to not become a victim. And that's really what I try to teach to the women that I talk to, not just women, but more likely, I mean, 1 in 4 women will become a victim of some type of assault, which is just mind-boggling.
Well, I think that we do a huge disservice to our children growing up, in the fact that most of them are not taught self-defense at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think if you started teaching at an earlier age, teaching people how to defend themselves, then that would carry on. Okay. Because your mind is forming it at these early ages. And if you start teaching a self-defense mentality, that starts getting ingrained in you. And I am thankful that, again, you are here to teach by example about what could happen. Okay. But again, too many people are taught not to defend themselves, not to retreat, basically, is all anybody's taught. And there comes a point where you can't retreat. You were in that situation where you couldn't retreat. Okay. So now what?
No, I mean, you're right. And as I've done more courses, obviously you try to avoid and then escape. And last resort is defend. And we didn't grow up in my family with guns. I wasn't pro or anti-gun. I just didn't even come up as a topic. But after this happened, that's when I got more interested in training in firearms. And I've done a ton of training. I think everybody should, if you're going to own a gun, be responsible, learn how to use it. But it makes me feel more secure, knowing someone can break into your house. Now I take all the steps now to prevent that with an alarm system and have more situational awareness. But there does come a point where if you have to defend yourself, because when we called the police, I called my neighbor first. After the guy left, I called my neighbor, and then the police showed up probably maybe 10 minutes later. Not that it wasn't quick, but that was a long 10 minutes of being potentially by myself. So that's why I bring up to people is you really have to be your own defender, because it can take a while.
I think a point to really point out is, again, apparently a good portion of this story is based on fact. I from what I'm getting, the hypothetical part is what's truly hypothetical, but your true story is so woven through this story. Case in point, therapist. I wanted to ask you why it was important for you to put the therapist's notes in the book. What was the reasoning behind that?
So that's an interesting story about how I wrote the book. So the book was originally written in third person, kind of omnipotent view. And I had an editor. So you got to see Laura, who's the protagonist who was attacked, who writes the story of what would have happened had she been, had she shot the guy. And you get to see the viewpoint of the therapist. And so the editor I had said it'd be stronger if I wrote the book in first person. So I actually converted it from third to first person. So then you only see Laura's point of view. And I didn't want to lose the observations of the therapist. And so I thought, well, how can I show that if I can't now show her character? So the way we handled that was at the end of a couple of the therapy sessions where Laura goes through this training called EMDR to help with post-traumatic stress. I write the therapist notes so that the reader can get an insight into what the therapist is thinking, even though I can't write in first person for the therapist. So it was really a writing technique.
Well, I found it very interesting because it added to your questioning of somebody's state of mind, just by her notes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there are a couple clues in the therapist notes that I swore I'm like, well, that's going to give away the ending, because all my books have a twist ending. And there's a note, there's part of the therapist notes, and I said to my editor, I'm like, well, that's just going to give it away. And she's like, no, it won't. People will gloss over it. And for the most part, people don't always get the twist ending. But for me, I always like the ending to be a surprise, but to be plausible. I don't like books where the ending is so far-fetched that there's no way in reality it could have happened. Hopefully, Jan, you found that spoilers, but hopefully you found that the twist was interesting.
I hadn't 100%. I had like maybe 5 or 6 chapters left when I wrote up my review for our website. And I put on there the very end of it, will she be found guilty or innocent? Because I didn't want to read the end of the book and have it, I don't want to give away the end of the book.
Don't.
So that's why I wrote my review before the end of the book.
Well,
and then I got to the end of the book and I was like, damn.
Well, thank God you did that, because you left it open-ended for yourself and anybody who's going to read the review. So I mean that was a perfect plan to be able to do that. Yeah, because I've read book reviews where it's like the first line in the review is the ending of the book. I'm like, well, why did you do that?
No, do
why
that.
would you do that?
Yeah, I didn't want to do that. It's like to me, it's like a movie. I don't want somebody to tell me a movie I want to go see because I don't want it ruined. Well, I'm the same way with a book. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I totally went shoom from my review to the ending of the book. It was.
Well, let me ask you this, Jen. In your reading, what you remember, what is the, if you can say as long as it's not the ending, the most pivotal part of the book to you, the character that you most remember?
I think for me, it was going through the mind of somebody who has been through an attack and how much they question everything.
Yeah. So I write, so after Laura, the character is attacked, and that part is not fiction. The attack is real. It's what happened to me. And part of why I wrote the book was I started journaling about what happened that night and all my PTSD symptoms. And I didn't even know what the word PTSD was back then. I just knew I was afraid of the dark after this happened. I had to check the house before I could go to sleep. I mean, I would check cabinets that no human could fit in, but I had to still check it. And then the craziest thing, I guess, crazy, was the guy had a knife. He had one of my kitchen steak knives that he had wrapped in a dish towel. And I didn't know that. Somewhere in the attack, I must have knocked it out of his hand. And it was only after the police showed up and we went back into my bedroom and saw the knife that I realized he had one. And so for almost a year, I couldn't go to sleep if there were knives out. If there were knives on the counter, knives in the sink, I couldn't go to sleep because the thought of a knife being that accessible to somebody just
well, it wasn't just that. It was the fact, oh, I'm passing this person on the street. Were they the person who attacked me? Being in the stairwell and hearing footsteps on the stairwell behind you. Are they going down or are they coming up after me? That's what I mean by questioning everything. You don't have a peace of mind in any way, shape, or form.
That's true, because I didn't get a good look at him. It was almost more tormenting because I did remember his voice and I remembered his smell. And so anybody that might have similar physique, I would listen to their voice and say, could this be him? And I did that for quite some time. And though my character Laura went through this therapy, EMDR, that helps with PTSD, I didn't. My therapy was time and writing the book. And the reason I really decided to write the book, besides, my brother-in-law saying that may not have been self-defense, was my mother asked me a question after the attack. And I thought, wow, what made you think that? And that would make a killer twist ending. And that's what sparked me to say, okay, this has to be a book, because now I've got the characters, I've got the storyline, and I've got this twist ending that I have to write.
How much did working on the hypothetical end help you in your recovery?
A ton. And what helped me the most was because I worked with, like I said, 3 criminal defense lawyers, but I also worked with a therapist to write those chapters of the therapy I never went through, but I put Laura through therapy. And that had to be cathartic. And I've had a lot of women who've told me that they've had some type of, trauma, and that reading that made them feel more normal, that these neurotic things I had about like checking a tiny cabinet that no one could fit in, they would do it too. And so it made them feel more normal, that you just do these things that you never dream you would do because your life feels out of control and you just have to check everything and you have to make sure you're secure. I had to sleep with the light on for almost a year.
We have a question from one of the people in our chat, Michael Bowie.
Yeah.
He's wondering if anybody's approached you yet for the film rights.
Oh, I would love that. I mean, all 3 of the books people have told me that would make good movies. So actually the 3rd book, Shades of Silence, Not Free of Malice, we've turned into a screenplay, and I'm working with a production company right now. But just because you're doing a screenplay does not make a movie. So yeah, right. I always put this out there. If anybody has any contacts in the movie industry, let me know. But we may be actually meeting with the Georgia First Lady, Marty Kemp, about the 3rd book, which is Shades of Silence, because it touches on human trafficking, and that's one of our platforms. So we'll see. I could only dream that any one of the 3 would become a movie, and even the 4th one that's not out yet, I think would make a good one.
My last question I have for you is your biggest takeaway for you from researching and writing the book.
I think it is the fact that the law can be turned for you and against you. And it was, you go to the range, maybe you practice too much, you're bloodthirsty, or you don't go to the range, then you're incompetent because you didn't practice. I think a good lawyer can make you look great or make you look terrible. And so in this case, I think it would have really been up to how good is your lawyer, how sympathetic is the jury, but it's a toss-up, and that your life is in turmoil regardless. And then that's just the criminal part. Then there's the civil part where the family could sue you if you killed this person. So that it's really, you have to know your legal rights, and you have to think about that before an event ever happens. It's not just the training to handle a firearm. It is the mindset of when you should use it.
Well, that's one of the things that I touch on a lot when we teach with firearms. There's always people that show up with their their bone stock, Glock 17 that they just picked up from the FFL, and that's they're going to train with and everything. And that's great. Then you got the guy that shows up at class who's got, some souped up race gun with every modification you could possibly make on it. He's got a red dot and a laser beam and an enhanced trigger, and he's got its suppressor ready, extended mag release. He's got a mag well on it. He's got the, every single thing. He's got the little FAFO, backer plate on the gun, and he's got it laser engraved on the front that says smile and wait for the flash. And I asked him, I said, is this the gun you carry? And they go, well, yeah, I wanted to have the best possible carry gun I could possibly have. I was like, do you have any idea what a prosecutor is going to do to you if you should ever happen to use that gun in a defensive situation? Is it you've got a gun that costs $600-700 out of the box, and you've put $1,500 into enhancements into it to make it more proficient at what it does. And even though you might be training to learn how to use that gun, a jury is going to be told that you purposefully built a death machine just so you could go out and look for a reason to use it. As if you're going to carry a gun that you're comfortable with, that's reliable, that you train and become very proficient with, but don't carry one of these crazy, ridiculous, souped up custom guns. Number one, because it's going to get taken away from you in evidence, and you're going to say goodbye to that gun. It'll probably be destroyed, even if you're exonerated, or wind up in somebody's safe. Or two, it's going to be used as evidence against you that says that you went out looking for that situation just so you could use that gun. And it's, like I said, the way lawyers twist everything, you have to put every advantage in your basket that you possibly can prior to anything ever happening to you. And it's not only about training, it's about being intelligent. You have to think, what's going to happen to me if I should happen to defend myself? How is this going to play out? You have one life to defend or one life to spend in prison with. Make sure that, you do it right both times. And it's right. Too many people have lost too much. There's a gentleman on YouTube right now. His name is Paul Harrell. He has a very popular YouTube channel. He's a firearms expert, competitive shooter and everything. 20 some odd years ago, he was one of the first people in the country that was carrying a 10 millimeter pistol. And if you know 10 millimeter, that's a hell of an impactful round. He got into a confrontation and had to use his firearm defensively. There was nothing modified about his gun, but because it was superior firepower, the prosecutors charged him with murder in a self-defense case because of the caliber of firearm that he was carrying, saying he was overpowered. It was a death machine. He was looking for a reason to use it. And that's an unmodified gun. So when you come out with some, ridiculous things, Cerakoted with, all different kinds of, superhero figures on it. And, you when you're walking around with the death pool gun on your hip, not smart. Yeah. It's not. Go to the range with it. Don't carry it.
And that's when you need groups like U.S. Law Shield and USCCA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because they're the ones that can help you whenever you are in that situation where you are left with no other alternative.
You're right. And I saw a comment saying that it shouldn't be a toss-up, right? Right should be right. Wrong should be prosecuted. And that was one of the things that floored me as I did my research, which was as I was talking to my criminal defense lawyer, she was excellent. She said, well, from the time he left, if he said, if you shut up, I'll leave. And of course I would, and I screamed. And he finally got up and left. I didn't have a firearm at the time. I grabbed a can of mace that I had and I ran to the door, but I had lost sight of him. So she said, well, in that time that you lost sight of him, and then you saw a guy running down the street, if you had shot that guy, how do you know that was the same guy? And I'm like, well, who else was it going to be? And she's like, well, a good prosecutor might say, well, that's just a guy who's out training for a marathon, who's running in the early hours of the morning. You lost sight of him and you just shot the first guy you saw running down the street. And so she's like, a good prosecutor can use evidence like that against you. And the point that she made, which was never occurred to me, was that once he was retreating, I was initiating a new fight because I could have just shut the door and called 911.
Right.
And what I kept saying to her is my mind was not there. My mind was in the thick of being attacked. 4 a.m, woken up, attacked. I was still fighting back, even though I was chasing him. And she's like, that's not how the law looks at it. And so that's why I think the book is so educational, is you have to think about that. I had no idea that I would be perceived as starting a brand new attack against him where he could be the victim.
No,
here in New York, okay, and I think it's the same way in California and some of the other states. Whenever you are put in a situation like what you were, you have an obligation to retreat. The only time that you can actually, quote unquote, defend yourself is when you have no other recourse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that. But that all of this brings up something I wanted to ask you, Liz. In writing the books and having this experience, doing the research, and going out and speaking with many people, have members of the legislature, whether in your state or other states, have they been reaching out to you to perhaps improve the laws or to create new legislation that might be able to help people who are either to prevent them from getting into a situation like you did, or to address, if they have gotten into that situation, how to better reflect what happened? Does that make sense to you?
It does. We know we're lucky in Georgia. We have a very active group of Georgia Carry, which is now 2A group, where we are constantly looking at what the rules are and the legislation is. One of the ones I got pulled into was actually the gun-free zones on college campus. Because that's a tough one, right? I don't like advertising to criminals that no one here is protected. And so I got pulled into some of that legislation just to talk about why I don't think it's good to advertise that you don't have a way to defend yourself. And it's not that I'm saying everybody should own a firearm, especially if you're not comfortable with it or don't feel like you could pull the trigger. One of the early research items I looked into as I was training, my instructor said, look, are you able to pull the trigger? Because if you're not, the firearm will be taken away from you. And so you have to think through those things. But I think the biggest legislation that I've been pulled into is talking about the effects of gun-free zones.
And how'd that go?
It's slow going. I'll put it at that. It's slow going.
That's good. That means the conversation's not done.
It's still going. Yeah. And, I get the other side when you talk to moms against guns and you look at the school shootings, and I do understand the other side where people feel like firearms are not good for our country. But I say, look, until you've been in my shoes and had no way to defend yourself or afraid in your own home, it's hard to say that a woman shouldn't have the right to defend herself.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. In fact, my point of view, and I've tried to get legislation about this. You can tell me what you think about it, Liz, if you want to. No pressure. But one of the things I've always tried to advocate for is every woman should be trained and to be proficient with handling a firearm. Not that they are required to own a firearm, but you graduate high school, you graduate college, and part of that graduation is also training in a firearm to put out the message. I mean, think of how that changes everyone when every bad guy out there has to contend with the thought that no, every woman has now been trained. They can defend themselves with a force multiplier. Is it really worth trying to be the bad guy? That's my thought on it. I don't know if you've ever had conversations like that before. I don't know if you agree or disagree, and it's perfectly fine no matter what you think, or if you don't want to answer it. But that's one of the things I would like to see passed.
Well, one of my good friends, Beth Alcazar, says she's more afraid of her blender than her firearm. And I'm like, I think if more people had training and understand how they work, people wouldn't necessarily be so fearful of them. It's a very sad story, but I had a friend who was raped, and the guy abducted her. Now, the first thing that went wrong was he abducted her from a parking lot. And, I've learned in my training, look, let the first place you're taken be the only place you're taken. Like, don't go to the second place, because that's obviously going to be more remote and more dangerous. But he abducted her from a parking lot and took her to a very, woods, and she didn't have access to help. And at one point he put the gun on the counter, and she thought about grabbing it, but she said, I wouldn't have known how to use it. Ooh. And she said, I've always felt bad that, I had a chance to grab that gun, but I didn't know how to use it. And I said, well, if it helps allay your concerns, he probably put the gun on the counter with the safety on, or maybe not loaded, and just wanted to see if you would grab it and use it. And if you had, he might have already just been testing you, and the gun wasn't even usable. So, yeah. But she wouldn't have even known if the safety was on. She wouldn't have known if the magazine was loaded, because she had never trained with it. So I fully endorse just understanding the basics, same way you understand the basics of how your car runs, in case you ever need to know.
Yeah, I can understand that. I see we have a question from the audience, and it's Mike Bowie. And by the way, in the audience, more than happy to hear your thoughts, especially since we have author Liz Lazarus with us. I can't talk now. Liz Lazarus with us, the author of not only Free from Malice. God, did I get that right? I'm sorry.
Malice. Yeah, it's good. You're good.
I'm just getting tongue-tied. I apologize. But actually, 4 books, 1 yet to be released. Please do leave your comments. So Mike says, which book would you recommend starting with? Of the 3 books that you have, one that could potentially become a movie if, all things go well, especially in Georgia with the first lady. Which one would you recommend going first?
Well, I guess the good news is that they aren't series, so you can read them in any order. The first one was where Laura, is attacked and learns to shoot, and you find out who the bad guy is. The second one, as I was learning to carry, my character learned to carry, and that's more of a criminal case. That's plea for justice, a criminal case that didn't go to court because the guy that was accused took a plea deal. And then the third one is more of a crime story. So the first 2 are more legal thriller, and the third one, Shades of Silence, is a murder mystery. So it really depends if you like the legal side or if you like the murder side. They all are pretty fast reads because there's a lot of dialogue, and they're 80,000 words. So they're not huge. So yeah, whatever. If you go to my website, you can get a couple first chapters of each one just to download for free, so you can kind of see which one you might like. And they are ebook, paperback, and audiobook.
Right.
I specifically like the audiobook because I do a lot of audiobooks myself, and you can be traveling, you can be, doing errands around the house and still listening to a book.
Yeah, the audiobook is rated 4.6 on Audible right now. So a lot of people seem to be enjoying that. I have one of the questions. I'll let you go, Frank, with your question. So your character in the novels, she has now become a firearm owner. You're a firearm owner. Does your character have similar taste in firearms to you, or is your character more elaborate, more reserved? What do you think? Is she running around with a 44 Magnum or something like that?
Well, it's a great story. The Laura in the book picks a Ruger. Nice. I in real life was dating a guy named Jeff, and he took me to the range, picked out 2 guns he liked. He liked the Ruger better, bought it for me. And it's too big for my hand. I call it Jeff the Ruger. I named my firearm. And it's kind of what not to do is let your boyfriend pick out your gun and buy it for you. And it's still even in his name. I always joke, it's a good thing we didn't have too bad of a breakup, or I could commit a crime with that gun and go back. And in the second book, I did it the right way, which I went with a firearms instructor. We tried out probably 10 different firearms and looked at the grip, and we looked at the recoil and the type of ammo and how hard it is to clean, and did all the right things. And I ended up picking the one I liked best. And that was a SIG. And then actually when I was just at Gunsight, I used an M&P. So, but my taste is, a lot of different ones I try. And when I was doing the book tour, I was able to try a lot of different firearms as I went around the different shooting groups. But the main advice is like shoes, as I'm sure Jan has heard, is decide for yourself, try it on, don't let someone buy it for you, and pick something that fits, and go with someone who's an expert to give you some advice on what to look for.
What's the character? What did she pick? What's her favorite?
So Laura has the Ruger. The second book,
Okay.
Jackie has a SIG. In the third book, I think it's a Mossberg shotgun. The fourth book is an HK. So yeah, I mix it up a bit. But I only pick the ones that I actually like or shoot. So yeah.
The best gun for self-defense is the one that you're going to use.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. Well, if your book tour ever takes you down to this part of North Carolina,
We got some choices. Okay.
we'll have Ranger Day, and we'll give you a whole assortment of stuff for book number 5 to try, because we got you covered. We got you covered no matter what you need. But now I gotta say,
And if we don't, we got friends that do.
That's for sure.
I just love when you say, "Oh, it's only 80,000 words. It's not huge." All right, listen. I've been trying to write the same children's book for like 11 years now, and I still haven't been able to finish it. It's got 4 paragraphs.
All right, Frank, this needs to be your 2024 resolution. We need to call me after this, and we need to just make it happen.
I have the it's the stupidest thing, because I don't like kids, but I'm writing children's books. And I had a very stupid idea on a snow-filled highway in upstate New York about a dozen years ago. And I came back to the house and I broke out my arts kit and I drew about 25 different characters. Each has a backstory. There's a whole plethora of storyline behind all the characters in my book, and I just don't have the wherewithal to put it together. So I don't know how the hell you can come out with 4 novels. I'm having a hard time drawing a hammer that has a face on it. I mean, this is,
we all have our things. I mean, seriously, writing the books is getting them published, getting readers and reviewers is much harder than writing it, but I'll help you. And I say this to people: if you're going to write a book, reach out to me. Let me tell you some of the kind of the rules of the trade before you go too far down the path. But books do well.
Well, I think what really killed my writing is, because I'm a pretty decent writer, but I think what killed my aspirations is I had about 400 pages written on my own book many, many years ago, and my hard drive crashed, and I didn't have a backup. So the whole thing, and I have the hard drive to this day. The hard drive is sitting in my cabinet on that side of the office, and I'm praying that one day the technology will exist that they can extract the work that I spent months writing. That I can't even think about it without wanting to cry.
No, so, I get it.
I got to give you so much credit for being able to write, because I think writing a book is probably one of the most difficult things you can do. Is having the fortuitiveness and the wherewithal to stay there, to take an idea, to flesh it out, and see it through to completion, and then still, in your case, leave it open for more. I mean, how do you draw the line as to say, this is the end of this story, and not go into the beginning of the next one? I don't understand how you could do that. Something I would never be able to do.
Well, I've been told like by my editor I should write series because they sell better, but I just feel like once I've given the character closure, when I can write a book when I know the hook that's going to open it, the twist ending that's going to surprise the reader, kind of the main characters, at least the protagonist and the antagonist. And then I outline everything. Maybe that's my engineering degree, but some people are pantsers. They write by the seat of their pants and they don't do an outline. I could never do that. I outline everything. And so I kind of already know what the full story is going to look like. And I try to give closure for any clues that I drop. And once I feel like I've given closure and a decent ending, then I'm ready to be done with that one.
One thing I'd ask, Liz, are you ever considering, you're becoming somewhat prolific, fantastic, that's always good, and hopefully you'll become like Stephen King, both in fame and breadth of novels that you've written.
But not political.
Yes, we can. That part.
That guy's something wrong with him.
He's gone off the deep end. He's been around Hollywood too long. Just my personal thought about him on that. But do you think of ever do you see in the future having a different genre that you would touch? And if so, what might that be? Like a pen name or something?
It's going to be a children's book co-written with Frank. I think that's. No, seriously, probably not. I love the thriller genre, and I wouldn't want to confuse my audience by doing something different. And I don't like to read sci-fi. I don't like romance. I like the thriller genre, so probably not.
Okay.
But thanks for asking. But I'll help Frank with his children's book because that needs to see the light of day, I think.
Don't make that commitment to yourself, because if I show you what I have on paper, you're gonna go, "What the hell is wrong with this guy?"
No, we don't need to see the book.
Too far away. We'll figure this out. We'll get it done.
Trust me, Frank. We don't need to see the writing to know that something's wrong.
Yes, I know. I know. My reputation kind of speaks for itself. Poor Liz.
Wow.
She got roped.
Frank's been having a hard time finding his crayons.
I know where my crayons are. They won't let me have them because I keep trying to explain the taste of purple, and nobody believes me. Meanwhile, these
everybody thinks it tastes like grape. It doesn't.
Well, what is your line? Whatever it is, I think I see becomes a Tootsie Roll to me.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Don't know that line. Never heard that before, but okay.
There's a big big advertising campaign built around.
You've never heard of the Tootsie? I mean, Tootsie Roll had 2 advertising campaigns. One was the songs, and whatever it is, I think I see becomes a Tootsie Roll to me. You never heard that. And then you had the wise old owl that tell you how many licks it took to get to the.
That I remember.
3 licks.
That I remember.
A 2, a 3. Crunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are Tootsie Rolls. Only 2 advertising campaigns.
And they were good.
And he doesn't know one of them. Just and he grew up in New York. That's a crying out loud.
Well, Liz, I wanted to tell you, anytime you want me to read one of your books, send it on over.
Okay, well, there's 2 more, and then the 4th one we're shopping it around right now to some different publishing houses. Which I actually think the 4th one's the best one yet. It's a stalker story, and I'd met Dawn Hillier from Hiding Hilda, the concealed carry purse line, and she got into that business because she'd had a stalker. And so I'm going to tell your story fictionalized. And then I reached out on Facebook to ask anyone if they'd had a stalker story, if they were willing to share it. And I had about 10 women reach out to me. So my bad guy is a combination of all their stories. So he's like, bad on steroids kind of guy. So I think this 4th one is my best one yet, but it's not out yet. But I'll be happy to send you the other 2, Plea for Justice and Shades of Silence.
Did you self-publish with the first 2?
The first 3, I went through a publishing company, small publishing house, Mitchell Cove Publishing, which is why I'm trying to get to a bigger publishing house for the 4th one. Because I just want it to have a broader audience. I think it deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see if we can get all the books on
your books off Audible.
Publishing. What is it? New York Times bestsellers list?
Yeah, well, a lot of that, and I'll reach out to you guys when the fourth one's ready. Is the pre-orders and having it spike the day it releases.
Well,
And with each book, I've been getting more readers, so that's always good.
yeah, let us know. We'll definitely have you back on right before
Oh, great, thank you.
to help you with your pre-sales.
Great,
Now-
thank you.
Are you familiar with Dan Wass?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I know that.
Yeah, we'll have to get you hooked up with him too.
Yeah,
Dan's great.
Dan is a fellow author who's got a series of books called Good Guy, Bad Gun.
Mhm.
And he's got, I believe, 3 books that he's got out now, and he runs a podcast, and he's also on he appears on several of the other shows. If you'd be open to the idea, I'm sure he would love to have you on to them, because at least he could talk publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a dopey gun guy. I mean, Dan at least is an accredited author.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to meet him and talk to him. I've had people reach out when they want to have an idea of a book, and my first comment is, "Do you really want to do this? It's a lot of work." But if I can't talk you out of it, then I'll help you do it. Yeah, I would love to meet him.
Yeah, Dan's a good guy. He's really good people. I think you'd enjoy the conversation with him.
Yeah, he's good people. All right, now putting the book aside, how was Gunsight?
Oh my gosh! Well, first of all, going in February or January, so Gunsight Academy, I went to the 250 defensive pistol class, and didn't realize it would be so cold in January in Phoenix. Because here I'm thinking, okay, it's probably like Georgia. I should talk about someone who does her research like crazy for my books. I did not do my research on the weather, so it was in the teens, but it was such good training. I mean, most of my training is like a day-long state shoot or a couple hours with my instructor. So to go 5 days in a row training was just fabulous. And the instructors are top-notch. You build on your skills each day. I got the award for the best job of clearing the house in the finale. So that was
Nice.
yay, went with the guy I'm dating. And so that was a competitive little scenario going on there. He beat me in the shootout, but I beat him in the house. So, it was great. I will go back.
Well, you must have had a good solid 3 weeks on the road then. You were
and then SHOT Show. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I got so aggravated since the first shot that we all missed because of COVID. Second shot I missed because I had COVID. And then this year I had to miss because I was recovering from surgeries, and I was supposed to I had everything booked to go this time around. And the way the surgery schedule worked out, it was like I was supposed to have something done the same week. And if I postpone, it would be very detrimental to my legal standing. So I was like, oh, well, I got to stick with this. And then they canceled. So I was like, okay, well, there's the hotel rooms out the window, the airplane tickets out the window. Everything's out the window, and I didn't get to go. So this is 3 years in a row now. I didn't get out there.
Yeah.
And I so wanted to be out there this year. But I did manage to get a couple of guns that debuted at SHOT Show and got the reviews up before anybody else did. So,
Good for you.
well, everybody always laughs because they say I'll get a gun, and people go, "Wow, you got that YouTube channel. It must be great to get free guns." And I'm like, listen, if you see me have a gun that is free, it's because I spent $4,000 in travel and accommodations and lost wages and everything just so that I could be fortunate enough where somebody would send me their $199 gun in the hopes that I would review it for them. So yeah, that free gun doesn't really equate to a whole hell of a lot when it comes down to it. But how did you enjoy SHOT? Was it getting close to the way it used to be, or?
Yeah, it felt like it was getting back to normal, after COVID had been kind of not as busy the last couple of years. It felt like it was finally getting back to the volume of people. And I hadn't been, because I typically go when I've got a book released, and I didn't have a book to release, but I did go and do a book signing. And it was just like, I wrote on my Facebook page, it was like going back to family reunion and just getting to reconnect with folks. I was only there for 3 days, and I could have stayed longer. There was just not enough time to see everybody.
Oh, there never seems to be.
Never.
There never seems to be. And I know that I don't think SIG is back there yet. I think SIG is done with SHOT. I don't think they're going back. With the first COVID, they didn't show up. They were the first company that pulled out a SHOT show, and now I don't think they've been back since. And I don't know. I think they're just happy to do SIG days up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to make it out there for that this year.
Yeah, I'm definitely
not that far of a trip for me.
Now, are you going to be attending the NRA annual meeting to promote the book?
Not because I've got a wedding I have to go to.
Oh.
So, and there's so much going on that weekend. So there's also the Mingle, which is a big event that the Complete Combatant puts on. So I got like 3 things all falling on the same weekend. But
good to be busy.
Yeah, it's better than not having anything to do.
True.
Exactly.
It's like, can we look at each other? Can we look at schedules and plan it out?
Yeah.
We get married a different weekend. No.
Yeah, we were sitting there going through all the books and like, yeah, we'll definitely go to NRA this year. Go to NRA. And I was like, all right, how long is it going to take to drive to Indianapolis? It was like 4 days of planning to go to Indianapolis before somebody reminded me it was in Texas.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm like, I'm planning for the wrong friggin' state.
Mm.
But I hope, if I'm not mistaken, they're doing not this year, but possibly next year. NRA is coming to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I believe, which would be great because the arena is only 17 minutes from my house. And I don't have to pay for a hotel.
Come back to Atlanta.
I'll definitely have to come down for that one.
Well, it'll be nice. I'm going to start taking reservations now for everybody that wants to come down to NRA and figure out how many inflatable air mattresses I'm going to need to stuff in my house that day. Well, that time of the year, I also have like 6 tents. I can put tents out in the backyard. We got screened rooms. We'll see what happens. But I think that should be a pretty decent showing. But yeah, I'm so mad I missed SHOT this year. I'm just kicking myself over and over again. I'm like, I didn't have to miss it. I could have went.
Yeah,
well, you know what? I'm thankful for I didn't get sick. You always come home with the Vegas virus, and I didn't get sick this year. So that was.
Oh, that's what you call it.
Yeah,
the Vegas
SHOT show.
I call it the Vegas virus because boy,
we call it the crud. The SHOT show crud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you've ever been sick in your life, if you want to know what being sick is, get a good case of the SHOT show crud. You start feeling it. You start really feeling the initial effects of it when you get to the airplane.
You're
when
right.
You get to the airplane and you sit down and the little sign says on this is we're about to taxi. All of a sudden you get this little burning sensation in the back of your throat. Like, the air in this plane is dry. And then a half hour later, you're sweating profusely and you're like, I think I'm dying. And then it's like that for another 2 weeks.
You're lucky, Frank, that Liz is here to corroborate what you're saying. Because in all the conventions I've covered and been at, and I usually work myself to exhaustion. Anyone who's ever seen me at a convention knows that I'm up 20 hours a day. So I understand being exhausted from work, but I've never gotten sick at a convention or being in Vegas.
You better knock on wood. Right? You better knock on wood. You don't get it.
Never
the year
heard
I went to SHOT.
Yeah,
I came back and I was fine. Frank got sick. I was fine.
Yeah. Well, my first shot, I came back. I was down for 4 days. Lori was sick for like 10. Lori was down for like 10 days after that. Second one, I was sick for 2 weeks. You were fine.
Yeah.
After that. Well, you know why he was fine? Because when we got back to the hotel room, he could go to sleep. We got back to the hotel room and I had to download 6 hours of video and compile them into all the shots to put on the website that night so they'd be fresh for the morning. So
You've seen my coverage.
Yeah,
You've seen my coverage when I do things like CPAC. Who says I'm sleep?
Yeah, I know. Well, see, Michael could tell you that I stayed up for 22 hours a day, except he slept for 6 of them.
Michael. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about me.
Go to sleep. I got to listen to the cavalcade of him and Steve Bozick snoring while I was up all night editing video, and then they complained that
don't
I got 2 hours of sleep. I would sleep for 2 hours in the chair in the corner of the room, and they would complain about my snoring. Kept
I
them
don't
up.
snore.
That's just
No,
not right.
you complained
That's
about
not
my
right.
snoring. No, crying out loud.
Only mostly, Dal. Only mostly. For those who are just listening to the show, not watching it, got a comment from Dal. He goes, Voss works himself to exhaustion even when he's not at a convention. Yeah, most events, when I'm covering an event, I got like 4 cameras running at once and edit all that afterwards. It's crazy. But going on.
All right, we got 1021. Liz, where are you going to be next appearing to try and promote the books?
Oh, good question. I will have to look at my calendar. I just did a podcast with Cat House Outdoors, and I haven't done too much promotion lately because all these 3 books are already out, and so we're really just trying to push getting the 4th one published and ready. So I'll have to get back to you on that, what my next event is.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Definitely let people know.
We're going to link with Jan's article and get that up on the website. And we're going to link on, if it's all right with you, we'll carry your LizLazarus.com with the index on there so people can, if they find that, we'll get a direct link over to where they can pick your books up. And
Sure.
how your books are available both in paperback and audio, right?
Right. A paperback, ebook, in the Kindle and the Nook, and audio. And all the links to where you could purchase them are on my website, LizLazarus.com. And like I mentioned, if you want to test read a couple chapters, you can download those for free. I think people should get to try and buy a little bit before they want to decide if they want it.
Like a drug dealer. You hear her? She's like a drug dealer.
Yeah, I'm the drug dealer of books.
They just sink the hook in enough. They sink the hook in enough, and then they pull you out.
Yeah, there you go.
On the screen right now is Liz's website. These are the 3 books that are available right now. And we said the 4th one is you're still waiting to figure out what to do with publishing. And now, is the book finished, the 4th one?
I mean, in my mind, it's finished. Hopefully, an editor and agent also think it's finished. They always have to change something, right? But I feel like it's pretty done. I think it's got the characters, it's got the stalker story, it's got the twist ending. I feel like it's ready.
Do you have your cover art ready?
No, I've got some ideas for it. But
Okay,
they all have kind of different colors. This one's going to be purple, so I kind of go with a color theme for each one.
Okay, because that's what sells a book.
Yeah.
And make sure to follow Liz Lazarus on all the social media platforms.
Yeah. I post a little bit on Instagram and Facebook. Not so much Twitter, but I tend to be on Facebook and Instagram the most.
Yeah, Twitter is dead.
Twitter is X, right? I'm so outdated.
Yeah, it's X now.
Everyone goes by both.
Do you want me to send you a picture of the review that I sent to Liberty First?
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, now. Before I got to wrap up this my own personal end of this a little bit early this evening. You guys can sit and chat all you like. Liz, quick take on topics of the week. What was your favorite news story this week?
Oh my gosh, my favorite news story.
Well, not necessarily like happy.
Let's see how quick you are.
I mean, I did see the one where Biden was mentioning Mitterrand and mentioning some of the people who are not with us anymore. That was a little worrisome.
When he was trying to have conversation with dead people. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, that's just worrisome, right? So I guess, I don't know if that would call that my favorite one, but that was a worrisome one.
Yeah, that goes right in line with the special counsel report on him right now.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one this week was that the president of Mexico has the ability to prevent supplies from getting through Israel into Palestine.
Right, when he was substituting the president of Mexico for the president of Egypt.
Yeah. Well, they both have pyramids.
Sort of. Not quite.
Yeah. South America has some pyramids. Egypt's got some pyramids. It's easy. It's very easy to get those two things confused.
Not really. Yeah. Okay. Right. But for Biden, it is absolutely.
Well,
No.
Egypt has a step period. All the Incans, the Mayans, those are all step pyramids. You can
Yes.
see, dude, I'm trying to give the guy some. I'm trying to help bail the guy out a little bit.
No,
I can
don't.
push him back in.
No, don't.
I know.
He's where he deserves to be.
You always tell me I'm too hard on the guy. I'm too mean. I try to be nice and I get yelled at. Marshall, what's your story of the week?
Oh,
It's Taylor Swift, isn't it? It's Taylor Swift.
No.
He's running back this week in the Super Bowl.
No. I just think it's interesting how these judges that are handling these cases about Trump being on the ballot are claiming that Trump is an insurrectionist when there hasn't been any due process involved.
So that would be Colorado, Maine, and Illinois.
Establishing if Trump is an insurrectionist or not.
Right. And you're talking about the states of Colorado, Maine, and Illinois specifically. Okay.
Right.
Well, it's coming from the bench of a judge. So that means he's got his due process.
Well, that's what they would like you to think.
I know that, Michael. I'm just saying, though, these judges think that they're God, and as long as they can make their edict the way they want to, that to them, I got to make my judgment. He's there.
Well, and that's what a lot of other people are trying to claim is Trump got his due process because these various rulings have stated that he's an insurrectionist. Well, that's not true because, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, none of these cases were actually against Trump or his campaign. They're actually against the state electoral board.
Yes.
And were set up to either remove him from the ballot, and the suit was actually against the state board of elections and not against the Trump campaign.
Yes.
And as a result, the Trump campaign and Donald Trump have not been able to defend themselves against the accusations.
Well, I think the argument that I keep putting out there as well is that how can you say Trump is an insurrectionist when anybody who has been arrested or convicted have never been charged with insurrection?
Well, it gets even worse than that. Now, my thing of the week, and I don't know if you saw this, Liz, a lot of people didn't listen to this. This is what I do. So I was listening to the oral argument with the Supreme Court, where Colorado was presenting in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, and all of the justices were looking at this skeptical, were not convinced based on the questions they were asking. And if anyone does want to, I think one of the most damning statements against Colorado, Maine, and Illinois in trying to make this claim that Trump is an insurrectionist and therefore can't be on a ballot. If you listen to the oral arguments, approximately starting at minute 50, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch asked the question, and this is very interesting. According to Colorado, the second that January 6th started, which would be while Trump was speaking, half an hour into at the end of the last half hour of Trump actually speaking, a couple miles away, that moment he ceased being the president of the United States and became an insurrectionist, and therefore his presidency was invalid from that moment forward. Therefore, he does not qualify to be on under the 14th Amendment, Section 3, to be on the ballot in Colorado, Maine, and Illinois. This is their argument to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court goes, so if he's invalid and an insurrectionist at that moment, that means that he cannot give, he's no longer the commander in chief. So the United States military has no ultimate commander. He cannot do any international foreign policy. He wouldn't be able to control and be the chief executive for the United States in domestic policy. So no one in every office and every officer underneath Trump would no longer have to listen to him. Is that the argument? So Gorchis asks him, is that correct? Is that the argument that he's making? Because people were still listening to Trump, and he still had the power of the presidency. And the state of Colorado, this is where it gets crazy. They said, no, Trump was an insurrectionist. And at the same time, because he was sitting in the White House, he's also the president and has the power of the president. So the military still had to listen to him. He still was doing international policy. He was still in charge of being the executive officer of the United States domestic policy. He still had all the power of the presidency, but he wasn't the president. And it's only because he's sitting in the White House that he wasn't. So they're saying basically it's Schrodinger's president. He's president, but he's not president all at the same time. Just don't put him on the ballot because we really feel like Orange Man bad. I don't care what anyone thinks about President Trump. Have whatever feeling you want. That's not how the law works. That's called accusation equals guilt. That is authoritarian. It is prone and absolutely will be abused. And that has nothing to do with the 14th Amendment in any way, shape, or form. This is illogical. They're going to strike this down. That was my big thing.
Yeah, I think it is going to get. I don't know that it will necessarily be like what Dahl's saying is a 9-0 for Trump, but I do think.
Yes, it will.
I do think the Supreme Court. I don't think the Supreme Court has any other way it can really rule and justify a ruling, but to rule in favor of Trump.
Well, if any of them want to go against him, they won't vote against him. They'll just abstain.
Well, I don't think they can abstain.
No, they can't abstain.
Because there's no conflict. They can't recuse themselves. But even Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is a DEI radical, and the least qualified of all the Supreme Court justices we have right now, even she was skeptical and bringing up questions about this doesn't make any sense. So I think it is going to be a 9-0. Liz, do you think any of the justices will, I'm not asking your opinion per se, but do you think it'll be a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court, or do you think there'll be some holdouts?
I think there's going to be some holdouts.
Well, I said
Honestly,
Liz. Mike, I said Liz. She's much prettier than you.
Michael, I think you're probably more educated on this than me. But you know what? I was thinking to Vass, do you do a summary of all, like, I would love to get a daily summary of all the different media you look at and what your opinions are.
Actually, I
want Cliff Notes. I want Cliff Notes from you. That would just be useful.
I was just gonna tell Vass, hey, Vass, before you ask her about her opinion on the Supreme Court case that's pending right now, why don't you ask her if she's followed the Supreme Court case?
Okay, fine. I always assume people...
She's got shit to do. No. She might not be following that stuff right now.
I know. That's why people listen to me, because I follow it. But
you follow it, you fill us in.
Yeah.
It's our job to follow that, right? We can't just abstain from that. But I think that as much as you follow it, to get a daily Cliff Note from you of the different sources and the different news that you're hearing would be really great.
What I
just signed you up for a job there, Vass.
That's all right. I do shorter things throughout the week. Short for me means anything from a 1 minute to 45-minute long review of stuff. And then every Sunday, my big thing's every Sunday, I go live and I'll spend somewhere from 2.5 to 12 hours covering whatever, including people's questions about, like with this, I think this Sunday I'm going to get a lot of people talking about 14th Amendment and what did the Supreme Court talk about. So that's what I do. I save it for Sunday afternoon, and I just go through everyone's questions on all this kind of stuff.
And I drop
Count me
in.
in.
I drop in every now and then when he's on YouTube, and I leave a comment under a name that he doesn't recognize. So he doesn't realize it's me. So he usually looks for the most ridiculous comment of the day. And, I think Frank was over here earlier.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. So that was the worst thing I thought this week. And I really, again, people are looking at it. Go to C-SPAN. It's minute 50. You'll find that don't believe me. Listen to it yourself. It's only 5 minutes. It'll make sense to you. But the next worst thing isn't that, Joe Biden has lost his mind, because he has.
Yeah.
That's the special counsel who said that. So you don't believe me, believe the special counsel. It's the government saying that Joe Biden has lost his marbles.
Yeah. And
I don't think that's the worst thing. The thing I think that was really bad, they tried to stop Tucker Carlson from interviewing Putin. Not because I like Putin. I don't. I've lived in Moscow. I know. I remember what the hardliners were doing when I was in Moscow, and they had the coup attempt. I was there. So, no, I don't like Putin. But to tell a member of the press that they can't interview an international world leader who is actively involved in a war that the world is paying attention to understand his mindset and to perhaps give them a greater ability to put pressure on him to end that war. And they're saying, don't do it because New York Times wanted the scoop instead, because it makes the Biden administration look embarrassed because he's going to say stuff about the CIA that some of it, at least, is probably true. That is absolutely horrendous. It destroys the First Amendment. It is evil. And quite honestly, if you listen to the entire interview, it's nothing new. Everything Putin says is what he's been saying. He's not a stupid man. There's a reason why he was in the KGB and why he's in leadership. He's very well spoken, very educated. Didn't say anything new, really.
And he knows his history.
Yeah.
I mean,
and every bad person can justify what they do. Everyone's the hero in their own story, even the villains.
Right.
And Putin is the villain, but he thinks he's fantastic.
Well, and actually, you bring up a good point. The difference between good and evil is a matter of perspective. Evil people think they're good and think good people are evil. I mean, it's literally a matter of perspective. Hitler thought he was
I think my whole thing about that, because that was going to be my thing, was the Tucker Carlson. I saw a report where they want to prosecute him because he interviewed Putin.
Like, what's the charge?
Yeah,
we're not at war. It may be a proxy war. And I love people when they say, "Well, he's committing a crime." We're not at war. Proxy all the way. But
if they try to prosecute Tucker Carlson for anything like giving aid and comfort and something like that, then I would hope to God that they go back a little bit and they nab Jane Fonda, because she's like 50 years overdue for her prosecution.
Well, Jane Fonda, we were at war. She is a war criminal, and I will not support anything with that woman. I'd love for her to be in jail. I despise her because of what she did.
Yeah.
But Tucker, we're not at war. You can't say he's aiding and abetting. So what? We're not at war. It's a proxy war.
It's not so much that we're not at war. It's Tucker Carlson. The left is so against him because he tries to tell the best truth that he can when it comes to storyline.
Well, it's I don't know this. Where were the people complaining when Sean Penn went down and interviewed Hugo Chavez? Where were the people, complaining when Oliver Stone went down and was interviewing all these people that are despots around the world that have, nothing but hatred and death to America and all the rest of the stuff. You have people that are Hollywood elitists that go and conduct some sort of interview with them or develop some sort of a business relationship like RFK Jr. did with Hugo Chavez and Venezuela. They never seem to have a problem with that. But you get one guy wants to go over and have an interview with somebody that this White House happens to be opposed to, and they lose it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe did they think he was going to say something about Burisma? Did they think he was going to say something about about whatever else is going on over there?
Well, he did. He embarrassed the United States because he highlighted he alluded to some of the actions of the CIA, which were probably true because the CIA does things like that. And so does every other secret agency of every international country, every country in the world. So, I mean, nothing new there. He did embarrass a couple of the presidents, Bill Clinton in particular, also President Bush, in saying that he made offers to be more, what's the word I would use, warm towards the West post Soviet bloc breakdown, that he was making allusions that he wanted to be more of a European Union kind of member, in fact asking to join NATO. No one took him seriously, and he was told no. Now, according to him, he said that the presidents were like, yeah, this would be great. Sure, I'm all into this. And then they came back and said, well, my people said no. All the agencies and all the other heads, they all said no, so you can't do it. I don't think that's exactly the way the conversation went. And I think he's got the best, biggest red rose-colored glasses on and blowing smoke up people's, because no. And anyone who knows the KGB and the way that they deal with political propaganda and what he said in the past, no. But I do want to answer one quick question from Graham, who asked the question. There it is. Did Putin make any good, valid points in the interview? And his discussion of the history is mostly correct. There has been a long, long conversation about whether or not Ukraine is Russia, Russia is Ukraine. It's been going on for hundreds of years, this argument. It's not going to be settled. He's very accurate.
Here's an idea. They can go back and watch the interview.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Yeah, but it was he had several legitimate points. Again, he's not a stupid man, and he's the best lie is one that's halfway true.
I know, but we're getting into the political weeds here, gentlemen and ladies.
I am the political weeds.
We always do.
Yes, I know, and it's getting close on the hour.
All right,
I'm going to get out of here in a couple of minutes. Before I do, I wanted to say, Liz, thank you very, very much, not only for coming to tolerating the four of us this evening, but for being so accommodating and sending out one of the books for us to get here. I'm gonna send you a little note off camera later as a request, and hopefully maybe we can have something that we can entice other people to join in. The next time you want to come back in, maybe something but in a book form that has your signature on it or something like that, as a week, maybe a giveaway or something. I don't know. We'll see. But
I will be right back.
All right. Well, I'll be gone when you get back.
Okay.
But like I said, it was wonderful having you here with us this evening. I'm gonna have to bug out. I got a couple of dogs I have to take care of. I hear them scratching at the door downstairs. The one that stole my mouse too. Speaking of, Vass, how's your pup?
He's all right. He's my puppy Liz. He's 13 years old.
Oh.
He's about he's a tiny little thing. He's a half Bichon, half Scotty. Great dog. And he's finally starting to feel his age. And for the last couple of weeks, he's been back and forth with constipation, some internal issues. He's feeling pretty good today, but it's day by day almost. Some days he feels great, and some days he's just like asleep.
What's his name?
Khan, as in Genghis Khan.
Oh, okay. K-A-H-N?
Khan.
K-A-H-N. Okay. Well, interesting, because my fourth book is the main character's a vet tech, so I have a couple animals in there. Maybe I have to put a Khan in there in honor of him.
Hey, one of the smartest dogs you can get, half Scotty, half Bichon, incredibly intelligent, just small to get to almost anywhere that he wants to, but yet everyone looks at him and goes, oh, he's a puppy, so they let him get away with things. 13 years, people still think he's a puppy. It's like, no, he just uses that against people.
Smart dog.
Yeah.
I'll stick with my border collies. I can wrestle with them. I can't wrestle with
my little girl.
Yeah.
Down there, curled up in a ball.
Yeah.
Okay, we're showing dogs. Come on.
I can't show dogs. Oh, my office door is locked. They're not allowed in the office while I'm broadcasting. The cats can come in.
This is my new baby. She gets officially adopted tomorrow. This is Summer.
Oh, sweet.
Tomorrow's the day. Oh, so you are officially going to be a failed foster. Congratulations. I am so proud of you.
I fostered her because we had to make sure the dogs got along.
Right. What is the pup eating?
She's a pit bull mix.
Now, what is she eating? What kind of
Food.
Huh?
Whatever doesn't eat her first, it sounds like, right?
I'd like to send her a gift. What does she like? For
I
crying
don't
out
know
loud.
yet. She's a very finicky eater.
All right, then I'll send something along the way. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, she's a very finicky eater.
My Chewy account has exploded this month. I'm sending the crap out to everybody. All right. New feature for the Range Report coming up is victim perspective on shootings, as we have a bulletproof body camera that we're going to be mounting onto targets that are going to be moving towards the camera as being shot at. So it's a perspective that nobody has yet. We're bringing it to YouTube on the Range Report.
Frank, we need to talk. We need to talk this week.
Okay. I must have done something wrong. Gentlemen, have a good night. Liz, Jen, ladies, thank you so very much for being here. I'm going to book out. You kids be safe and shoot straight. Remember, plug the website before you go. And I'll turn the sign off when I'm out of here. So everybody have a good night tonight. I'll catch you all later. I gotta go.
Night,
Have a good week, Frank.
Great talking to you. So I probably have to follow Frank's lead. I got a couple folks waiting on. Thank you guys for having me. And Jan, thank you for reading the book and for the review. And Voss, I'm going to follow you on Sundays. I got a lot to watch.
Thank you. Always happy to hear. And please, one of the big things is ask questions. Ask about anything and everything. That's what I do. That's what I'm here for.
Wonderful.
Even
We
if it's
do
on
appreciate
replay.
having you on the show, Liz.
It was my pleasure.
Got to get running, so go
Yes.
ahead and let
I look
everybody
for-
know where they can find you at, and anything else you got upcoming.
Yes, website lizlazarus.com, LIZLAZARUS, and you can find all the links to the books, and also you can sign up to I don't do a newsletter, but you can sign up to get announcements of when the next book will be out. And we can do some giveaways. So I'll follow back up with Frank to see what we might want to do for that.
And definitely make sure to come back on before your new book is released so we can get some pre-sales for you.
Okay, awesome. Well,
Okay.
It's been a fun Friday night. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm out too, guys. I got to go take somebody outside.
Okay.
Yeah, new schedule.
Yeah, totally. Hey, different than having a cat, let me tell you.
Yes, they are. Very much so.
All right, guys. Have a good evening.
All right.
You too,
Jan.
Jan. We'll see you next week.
We
Wow,
lost.
everybody abandoned us.
Pretty much. I mean, let's see, but it's a kind of okay. I mean, we had a great conversation with Liz.
We did.
We talked a little bit about the SCOTUS which there's not much more. I mean, it's basically the same argument we've been talking about for what, 2 weeks now on the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Uh,
Ever since Colorado.
Pretty much, yeah. That's about actually 3 weeks. 3 weeks now. And then there's Tucker, which is a question of the First Amendment. But again, there's no reason. The only reason is either jealousy or the bias of trying to shut him down. We've covered that.
Well, and they've also seen comments prior to the Putin interview where they're trying to say, well, he's just giving Putin a stage. He's a supporter of Putin. All Republicans are supporters of Putin.
You know what? It's called journalism.
Mm-hmm.
You interview the person that's I don't care. I've been trying to get members of Antifa to do interviews with me. I don't care. It's not about, what about all the journalists, the left-leaning, well, screw that. Any journalist who's embedded with Hamas right now, that's embedded with whatever terror group or whichever military around the world. It's not because they're supporting them. They're talking about the news. They're letting people know what's going on. No one assumes that just because you're embedded in Gaza, that you're either with Israel or that you're with Hamas. You're there to cover the news and let people know this is what happened. Tucker's the same thing.
And here's the other thing. Okay. Real journalism shows you all sides of an issue or whatever, and allows you to make up your own mind. It doesn't try to persuade you. Once you get into persuasion, where you're trying to persuade people, then you're getting into opinion and op-ed.
Yeah. It's getting too authoritarian. We're seeing too many elements of authoritarianism slipping in. The ballots in New Hampshire don't count. Keep them off of the ballots in Colorado and Maine. And when I said New Hampshire, I'm talking about Joe Biden. Democrats invalidated an entire state and their vote. Colorado and Maine, possibly Illinois, want to try and punish Trump because they don't like him.
Right.
We're affecting the news media, what you can and can't say. YouTube's running around just randomly deleting videos just because they're making up a rule because they don't like the subject matter. Something's wrong, folks. There's this undercurrent of authoritarianism, and I think it's really scary.
Well, and we don't pretend to be a news media outlet. Okay, we really aren't citizens journalists or any of that. Yeah, we do bring news stories and so forth. I'm talking about this live stream.
I know. I'm having fun
you.
as you're talking. Yeah. Go on. I was making light of it.
We offer our opinions, and we welcome anybody with opinions contrary to ours on this show. And that's an open invitation to anybody. I don't care what part of the political spectrum you're at. You are always welcome on this show to have a discussion. But we offer our opinions as we see them based on related news stories. Okay. And that's what we do. But we're not giving you breaking news. It's our opinion as to what may happen. It's our opinion as to how we think certain things, how the Constitution applies to certain things. It's our opinion on all kinds of stuff on this. And it's our opinion on what we think may or may not happen as a result of what's happening in the news. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I know on your show, you actually do more of a journalistic take on stuff, but on this show, we've never tried to pretend to be a news agency, so to speak. Okay. Plain and simple, we do op-eds on various stories. We offer our opinions.
which I think is just as vital.
Oh, it is.
Well,
I think it's critical.
because
But-
we're a free nation. We should be having these conversations.
But don't try to portray being a journalist when you're offering an op-ed.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Okay.
Big
If
difference.
you are biased in your news story, it's no longer journalism.
No,
If you're presenting just the facts from both sides and allowing people to make up their own minds, then yeah, that's journalism.
no. There's well, sadly we've allowed the media and the partisan divide to shift the understanding of what is news media, what's commentary, what's journalism, we've shifted it so much into opinion as opposed to here's a fact.
Mhm.
Here's the fact. You can figure out your feeling about the fact on your own.
Right.
Here's just the fact. This is what happened. And we've moved so much further into commentary, and because it's coming from the big names, a CNN and MSNBC,
Mhm.
um,
Well, that's
which is approved by White House, then it must be objective. No, that doesn't make it objective. It just makes it mass media. That's it.
yeah. And honestly, I think a big downfall is because of this 24-hour news channel.
Yeah, they're chasing things. They're so busy chasing the next thing for the next minute and a half
Mm-hmm.
that they're not. I mean, how many times have we seen them get it wrong? Because they're so busy trying to get this for the next minute and a half. They got a minute and a half to fill, and they got to get the next story, And they want to be the first one to get the story. And then they got essential elements of that story wrong.
Right.
Do your homework. Sometimes, I mean, I remember when I did in 2018, I was covering red flag laws. New York State was considering the red flag laws, and I read the bills. I spent 6 months researching 150 different sources, including the state of Connecticut, including the state of Indiana, talking to their judicial departments, talking to their legislative and the executive branches, getting data from them, and requests going back and forth, reading various reports. It took 6 months so that I could write a 8,000-word report so that I could, one, talk about it intelligently, and two, that I could present it to New York State, to the New York State legislature.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that really anymore.
No.
I mean, yeah, John Stossel does it sometimes, but really you don't see that kind of caliber. That should be the norm.
Well, yeah, and that used to be the norm. But like I said, with these nonstop news channels like CNN, like Fox News, MSNBC, and others, they really, in order to fill airtime, they have to offer their opinions on stuff. They don't really have any choice, and they don't. And anymore, in order to support their opinions, they only show one side of the news. They don't show the full story.
No, they really don't. And it's so obvious. It's like when we were talking with Liz, and she says she's watching the BBC. She's lived in France.
Mm-hmm.
And you do see, and that's why I always tell people, read at least one or two publications that are from outside the United States, that are talking about issues in the United States, whatever your issue is, whether it's gun control or it's abortion or it's food, the climate change, whatever it may be, whatever your thing is, read what some other country is saying about the United States or that subject, And because you will get a very different conversation, very different quotes, very different amounts of information if you're outside the United States than what the internal conversation is. Because
Right.
in America, it's very much, here's the headline. We've got 30 seconds to fill. That's the entire story. Go on. Overseas, we're getting more information. Still not enough, but you will get more. Maybe 5 minutes, which still isn't enough, but a hell of a lot more than the 30 seconds you got here.
Well, yeah, definitely. Okay. And honestly, it would not be a bad idea for people to look at news sources from each continent and get regional takes across the world.
You know, I don't know a good the continent of South America. I don't know a good news source, a credible news source there. I know I've got Southeast Asia, Europe, several in North America. Yeah. Even Australia, I have several sources. I don't know one. If anyone, someone should write in the comments, a good, credible, internationally credible news source. That's if they're right leaning or left leaning, then give me the counter as well. Someone who's credible on left and right. Centrist is best, but left and right. So I have that balance there, not just, well, here's this one guy and he's, radical left or right, doesn't matter. Then that defeats the point.
Yeah. And because that gives you takes on how different areas of the world look at us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because you find drastically different takes of the way Europe looks at us compared to the way Africa looks at us.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to the way Southeast Asia looks at us or Asia. Compared to the way Australia looks at us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, they're all different. They all have different opinions of the United States.
Yeah. Oh, massively.
Okay. And they all have different takes of the United States.
And different influences. I mean, Africa has a huge influence from China, which is definitely coloring a lot of things, except for Northern Africa, which is being influenced a lot by ISIS and Al Qaeda once they got released from prison. So there's yet another different take, which all affect us, not only today, but also they're also teaching the next generation these same biases that are then going to affect us, which people don't think about. It's like, yeah,
that's another reason why we urge people not to take just our take on stuff, but to do their own research and find out the information for themselves, because we get things wrong. We're not infallible. We try to do the research. We try to do as much information gathering as we can before we do our takes and opinions on this information. But it's still, there's things we miss, or there's things that we look at in a different context than what somebody else might look at it. So,
yep. Well, was there anything that you wanted to cover? I know there's a couple of things people are asking. I know nothing about Taylor Swift. Seriously,
yeah,
nothing.
Honestly, that shouldn't even be a thing.
I know people keep talking about it. I have no idea what it is. It's an entertainer. I really don't like I don't care about entertainers. Not in politics. I have no idea. I also don't know what genre does she sing? She's a singer, right?
Kind of country pop.
Oh, is that okay? So
yeah,
double reason why I have no idea who she is. Okay, I'm into rock music, people. Give me classical, give me techno, or give me classic rock. That's it. Classical, techno, classical rock. I don't listen to. I have no idea what she's ever sang. Don't care.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I don't care what any celebrity says politically, whether they are conservative or liberal. Okay. Because again, it's their opinion. And if you are going to be guided by somebody else's opinion, you need to start doing the research and forming your own.
You know, who's one of the only, there's very few people who I actually respect when they talk about a couple of issues that are entertainers. You know who's one of them?
Who?
Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle, when he's talking, Don Cheadle put his money behind his mouth and actually put his body behind his actions in terms of Rwanda and the Sudan. And I remember, God, this has got to be like 2010 when he put together a fund to help with the on and off ongoing genocide, attempted genocide that's been going on in what, 2, almost 3 decades now.
Right.
But there's been an attempted genocide of some peoples in Darfur in the Sudan. And Cheadle was talking about it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then he put his money behind it. And then he went to Africa and tried to help the people. And he spent a lot of time there. Then that led him to Rwanda, where he started to live and was working there to help those people. You know what? He earned my respect. When he wants to talk about Africa, I will listen to Don Cheadle because he actually did the work.
Yeah.
But,
too many of these entertainers are jumping on the bandwagon in the position where they think they're going to get the most fans for.
Like LeBron James. LeBron, just because you're getting a check from China doesn't mean I should think China's good too.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. No, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally what a lot of this is. Okay. Taylor Swift is, as they say in show business, no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah, that's true. Which is why I know nothing. So again, there's something with the Super Bowl with her. I have no idea.
And
not saying that people shouldn't, if that's your thing, fantastic. Go find out. I have not even on my radar.
Okay. The only thing that we touched on a little bit, but not much, was the DOJ report on Biden.
Well, yeah, but that's an easy one to sum up. Biden is brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
A little facetious, but essentially.
I honestly think that this is a means of setting it up so that he can, number one, be removed from office with the 25th Amendment. Number two, make it so that he can gracefully bow out of the next election. And number three, set it up so that they can probably get Newsom or somebody else along those lines in as the Democratic candidate.
Okay. Flesh out. I need 30 seconds or so, and then I'll come right back to this. You go ahead, flesh this out. I'll be right back.
Okay. So basically what I'm thinking is, like I said, and I've been thinking this all the way along, that somewhere during the second half of Biden's first term, that they are going to find some way to remove him from office. And the reason being is if they remove him from office during the second half of his term, then that means Kamala is eligible for another 2 terms. But Kamala has lost a lot of popularity as well. So now I think they're trying to find a way to get it so that he can actually bow out of the 2024 race because he doesn't have the numbers to win. They are terrified of Trump and they think they need to have another candidate go against him. Right now, progressive think tank, Governor Newsom has some huge support, and he's already alluded to his aspirations to becoming president.
Okay.
So I think this is going to give an opening for that without him actually having to go head to head with Biden.
Thank you for giving me a chance there. I know basically the argument, because it's an argument that's been actually been happening since 2019, that people have been talking about this because of Biden's age. And even then, he was starting to slip. He was always known as a gaffe machine. But that was more because he was insensitive and many would say even racist. And there were many examples of that. But as we've gone forward, it's been more about mental deterioration. Now, I was one of the people who were on record back in 2019, 2020, 2021, that believed that they were going to switch out Biden somewhere around 2022. Because, and I've said it publicly, and I expected them to get rid of him, put in Kamala, because Biden is a liability.
And we discussed that early in Biden's presidency multiple times on this show.
Yeah, and I promised that it would happen. They didn't take the opportunity. They thought that Biden was stronger. Kamala was definitely not doing well in the polling. No one likes her. Democrats don't like her. She's ineffective. Matter of fact, she's counterproductive. She's worse than ineffective. She's like literally will make things worse. So they didn't take that option. And now they are stuck with him. I do not think they're going to replace him. They're putting out the floater. They're putting this out to see how much damage has happened and how much work they need to do to get him over the hump in 2024. How much more corrective propaganda and advertising and Orange Man bad do they need to put out there to get him to the finish line, which is literally election day. That's all they got to do is get him to election day. They don't care about anything. Everything else after that they can fix. They won't do it because the 25th Amendment has been brought up by Republicans and Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, a couple times now. Not going to happen. They've spent too much money. They've waited too long. You can't switch. It takes a year and a half to gear up for a national campaign. They cannot take all the Biden infrastructure and just say, oh, and here's Gavin Newsom tomorrow. They can't. Even it's more than just printing up everything. You can't switch. Not enough people know who Gavin Newsom is. Not enough people know about his positions on the issues. It really, if you think DeSantis debating with him was about getting ready for the presidency, no, it wasn't. It was about people seeing his Gavin Newsom's face. But he's not ready for a presidential debate or even introducing himself to the American people. He's not in this. He's prepping for 2028. If they use the 25th Amendment, that means Kamala becomes president. They've broken the glass ceiling. A woman of color now suddenly is president. And because of that, they'd be required to run with her because people know her name. She's a woman, a person of color, and she's president. They'd have to put her onto the ballot and run with it. They don't have enough time to do anything else. Even if they did that, they lose. Matter of fact, they lose worse with Kamala than if they just had Joe Biden in.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is just them doing damage control. How much money is it going to take? How much do they have to scream about Orange Man bad? How many other stories do they need to float out there to cover this up? Does that make sense?
That very well could be. And I know that they are trying to downplay it and basically trying to say that the DOJ report is
Political.
telling in that it basically exonerates Biden.
No.
and
No.
and that's the last thing that actually came out on that DOJ report.
Yeah. They're just looking to, how do you get away from, they cannot justify and cannot win the argument on Biden has classified documents for 3 decades, 4 decades that he cannot have. It is a crime. They cannot escape that. It is inexcusable. So now they're coming up with distract, so that everyone stops talking about that story, so they can talk about some other story, and in particular switch it back onto Donald Trump and say Orange Man Bad had classified documents, but he's mentally sound.
Yeah.
And now they're back into Orange Man Bad. Orange Man Bad. Joe Biden's great. Orange Man Bad. Wait a minute, you just told me Joe Biden's mentally deficient. No. He's not that deficient.
Yeah.
And besides, Orange Man Bad.
So Michael Bowie says, if Obama had a sex change, can he run again? Constitutionally, the answer is no. Progressively, the progressives would say yes, because he's a different person.
Yeah, but progressives are out of their mind. The answer is absolutely no. No. And, but, they want Michelle to run because they think, she'll do it. But again, not enough time.
And actually, I think they're trying to gear her up
no,
for 2028 also.
Yeah, just like they got Oprah to run. It's a joke. She's useless. Will not work.
Well, she is. Okay. Oprah. Yeah.
Oprah was a candidate for all of 1 month because too many skeletons, not qualified, not capable of handling the level of politics necessary, out of her depth. Same thing for Michelle Obama. You may love her. You may think, oh, she's beautiful, which I don't agree with. But whatever you think about her, she's not. She's not prime time. She's not ready for this game.
I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. There's a ton of other things that we could talk about, but we are at 2 hours, 17 minutes right now.
No, we've had a pretty good night.
We have. I do appreciate Liz being on the show with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Remember, folks, Liz Lazarus. Pick up her books. You can find them at Liz Lazarus. Lazarus.com.
See, it is hard to say that fast.
It is.
Thought people were laughing at me before. I'm like, Mike can't say it. You say it fast on live. It's hard.
But yeah, you can find her at LizLazarus.com. You can find her on all social media. She does stuff on Instagram and Facebook primarily, but she's also on Pinterest and X. You can find her Audible, Amazon, Barnes & Noble as well. And you can also find her on the various e-readers.
Yeah.
Kindle and so forth.
Yep.
Okay. So definitely check her out. And we do, again, appreciate Liz for being on the show tonight. And we welcome her back anytime she wants to come on.
Absolutely.
Michael, why don't you go ahead and give yourself a plug real quick?
Well, if you found any of the things that when we talk about the politics, that's what I do. And I try and break it down so you can understand. It's no sound bites allowed. We spend more than the minute and a half that the news media usually gives you to talk about these issues to get a better understanding. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m., we start talking to the world. Anyone can type in, give me your comments, ask the questions, just like you saw some people were doing here today. That's the show. We talk about the issue, and I provide the sources, left-leaning, original, pure sources, so that you can see exactly what's going on and then make up your own mind. Starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. No sound bites allowed. Easy enough.
And you can find him on all social media platforms too.
Yeah.
Just look, Soundbites Allowed. Okay, for us, we're the Liberty First Foundation. You can find us at l1f.us. That's where our primary home is, and through there you can actually find all of our social media and follow us there. As you can see, all that's right on our front page. You get insight to our articles, access to our articles, and learn more about what we do and what we support. You can also go to our membership drive. Folks, everything we do, from this live stream that we hold every week to our website to our educational initiatives and everything else, costs us money. And that's money primarily that comes out of our pockets. This year, starting actually last year, 2023, we opened up a membership, and we promoted our membership drive. And this year we are continuing that membership drive. Once we reach 250 paid memberships, we are going to be giving away a custom Henry Golden Boy 22 lever action rifle that is engraved with the Liberty First Foundation logo. In order to be eligible, you must be a member of the Liberty First Foundation. So I do urge everybody to join up. And what the money goes for isn't into our pockets. It goes to pay for stuff like our website. It goes to pay for the software that we use for hosting the show. It goes to help spread our message. And the more we can get that message out, the more people we can reach. That's what your membership pays for. And hopefully it will get us to a point where eventually we can start going after the infringements that this government initiates on us on a daily basis. And I'm not talking just with gun laws. I'm talking about all of our rights and how they have exceeded their authority. But in order to do that, we must have deep pockets. And none of us that you see here every week have deep pockets. So that's where we have to start getting our memberships sold, start getting more members behind us. That gives us a larger voice. With that, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We do urge you to join us and ask your friends to join us. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon to know every time we go live. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.